The old relationship with the United States based on economic integration, military and security cooperation is over. It is no longer clear what the United States will do now. But what is clear is that we, as Canadians, have power. We possess our very own place of residence, so we can control our destiny. We have more than any other country can ever want to take from us, including the United States. We can deal with this crisis better by building our strength here at home. It will take hard work. It will take constant effort from governments, businesses, workers, and Canadians. We will have to drastically reduce our dependence on the United States. We must look to other trading markets. We will have to take previously unthinkable actions at unprecedented speeds.
Well, we just heard from the new Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney. He uttered those words a few days in the past, and the majority believed it to be merely an oration. But the threat was carried out. Indeed, counterattacks have been made. Counterattacks have been made at unprecedented speeds immediately. One of them is precisely the one we are going to talk about today, because Trump has just received a blow he did not see coming. A blow that he did not see coming. Canada crushed him with $350 billion at stake that are on the table today. We're talking about $350 billion. Well, that's the deck of what's on the table here today. That is the value of a brutal investment in trade that Donald Trump thought he could trample Canada with without consequences. And now it's clear that he's paying dearly, dearly for his arrogance. It appears that Canada made a brilliant strategic move, successfully countering Donald Trump's threats. This happened just one day before his widely publicized tariffs were scheduled to be implemented globally. Canada's economy is already causing the US to suffer, leaving it in a state of shock. Shaken by Donald Trump's ego and especially in trouble, especially in many sectors, this is not, and let me show you some of the notes because this is no longer a disagreement between neighbors. Already Mark Carney himself is saying that the times of considering the United States as a trading partner or a friend are over. That no longer exists. They can't be trusted. And that's a very hard lesson that Canada had to learn. Now with Donald Trump, and one that will not be forgotten. This story, my friends, is just beginning. And we're already seeing it fall apart precisely. The US economy. There you can, by the way, see. Let me give you the context of a few things because, by the way, yesterday, Alba and I went to the supermarket and we were grabbing. We already had, in fact, some jalapeno peppers in the cart. When we checked everything to see if it comes from the United States, although we almost know that right now the shelves of what comes from the United States are empty, except for the jalapeno peppers, which we happened to double-check everything we had in the cart in the vegetable area, and we saw that the peppers said that they came from the United States. Well, of course, we opened the bag and returned it. The thing is, folks, it was intact. And that's when we explained why there was so much of it. Of course, because nobody was taking it. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly what we are witnessing in some of the visuals associated with this particular movement. There is absolutely nothing produced within the borders of the United States. You can observe some outcomes arising from the ongoing actions which can be witnessed through the presence of shelves. The spaces where US products were once located now stand completely vacant. In their stead are empty spots. An advertisement is displayed promoting the purchase of Canadian goods instead. And even if you wanted to buy American, the vast majority of these products are gone, are no longer there. The few that are left are rotting there. The most ironic thing is that Trump doesn't even know what he wants because, look, there are the consequences. But one day Trump says he needs us for our resources. Another day he says that we are the jewel that the United States has to take, that it would look very good if he would blur the border, take all of this vast territory as he refers to it and possess it fully. And another day he says that Canada is good for nothing, that Canada doesn't contribute anything, that he doesn't want us close, and that he doesn't need anything from Mexico or Canada. So, who understands Donald Trump? Are we unpredictable or are we? Are we indispensable or are we disposable? Because while he continues with this confusion that even he does not know what he wants, the facts are there and they are speaking for themselves. And they are speaking for themselves. Today, my friends, the US economy is paying the price for the decisions of its president. The headlines, for example, of some reports such as Reuters or the New York Times, you can see it there. They speak very clearly of Guardian, which says that the United States has been reporting for weeks that US companies, gringo companies, are on edge because in both Canada and Mexico, both in Canada and in the United States and in Mexico, we no longer want their products. And this, my friends, is not just a whim. They have earned this in spades. Concerning Canada, in 2024, it is worth mentioning the significant impact of a $350 billion hit on the United States. The aforementioned figure originates from the year 2024. In 2024, Canadian exports, the consumption of U.S. products in Canada reached exactly $350 billion. According to official data from Statistics Canada, the total value of American products exported from Canada amounted to an astonishing $350 billion. Well, it turns out that now that this tap is being closed, Donald Trump is feeling the blow and he is feeling it very strongly. A hit of $350 billion doubles even the strongest. That is why some media such as The Guardian, in this article that you can see there from the New York Times, The Guardian, The Washington Post, they are already saying, among other things, what you are going to see there is that flights between Canada and the United States alone have dropped by up to 70% since Donald Trump unleashed his tariff war. 70%. Bookings, for example, according to OEIG data, hotel bookings for April 2025 plummeted to 296,000. Well, last year, do you know what they were? 1.3 million reservations. So today there are a little over 1 million reservations in the hotels, for example, in Las Vegas, which are gone. What's in Las Vegas today? Empty hotels. Why? The reason is that the Canadians spent a staggering $4.8 million annually for the past few years, amounting to an enormous expenditure of $11 billion. Well, I correct this figure, 4.8 million visits of what was reported here, both by road and by air, and $11 billion in spending, according to the U.S. Travel Association. So now imagine that Canadians no longer want to have anything to do with the United States, neither visit nor buy their products. Nothing that smells like the United States. There is even an influencer called Policy who is uploading videos of phantom casinos. Yesterday I was watching it on TikTok. On the Strip, and the comments are unanimous. What do they say in the comments? Did you ask for it? He complains that the hotels and casinos are empty in many places where before there was no room for a soul. However, they have rightfully earned it. That's not just a bump in the road, folks. It's a slow-motion downturn in America. The airline industry is in a tailspin. Check it out. And I repeat, back to the sources. Delta, United. American Airlines have already cut routes. They are cutting people. Why? Because their sales have fallen by as much as 70%, especially on flights to Canada. Within a mere 2-month span, the stocks of renowned airlines such as Delta and United witnessed a sharp decline of approximately 35% and 36% respectively. According to data that you can confirm in La Vanguardia, in Reuters, that are quoting these sources and interviews from Airlines for America, who are saying that they had a dramatic drop in visits from Canadians, or visits from Canadians that are costing them nothing more per airline than 2.1 million and 14,000 direct jobs that today they have to cut. That is to say, just to this company. Today it has 14,000 unemployed Americans. Why? As a consequence of Trump's policies. The domino effect of not getting tourists through airlines prevents us from getting tourists. That tourist does not arrive by those airlines, they do not book hotels either. There is no consumption in restaurants, there is no spending in stores nor in casinos. Tourist economics of the United States has already estimated that international tourist spending in the United States is going to drop $18 billion so far this year alone. Las Vegas alone. The country relies on Canadian tourists for about 8% of its annual visitors, which amounts to around 42 million visitors per year. Is today. Someone might argue that 8% isn't significant, but is it really a small fraction? Is not a big deal, but where did the rest come from? From Mexico, which today wants nothing to do with the United States. From Germany, which today is warning you, and from the United Kingdom and from all of Europe, which today is issuing travel alerts saying do not travel to the United States because it is dangerous. If you travel, you run the risk of being arbitrarily arrested, arbitrarily detained and thrown in jail without any explanation, just for the sake of it. And then, of course, you start thinking, hey, if this is happening to Germany, if this is happening to citizens of the United Kingdom, what's in store for me with my skin color? Well, we know what they are like. Here there is racism at its maximum expression, and you'd better not even look. Now, if you don't want to see ghosts, if you wish not to encounter ghosts, refrain from venturing outdoors after dark. If you have nothing to do in the United States, well, if you want, it's better to stay indoors to avoid going out. A detention center in the United States with a spare room available for free, for the sole crime of wanting to go spend money in your country. Money in your country. So, of course, nobody is risking this or it wouldn't be that big a deal. Really. I had mentioned some data which can also be found in a few of these sources right here for you to access. The ongoing tariff measures have caused a current reduction of 20% in hotel bookings as reported by the Nevada Tourism Authority. The impact on hotel bookings is apparent with a decrease of visitors. Donald Trump's tariff measures. A lot of data, especially in Las Vegas and the rest of the United States, who are saying that their businesses are collapsing, that they're not selling. Businesses that are going out of business today because they were planning, for example, to sell. Look, they're not even just casinos, hotels, diapers, for example. Let's see, a company called Parcel Company that was planning to sell diapers in Canada like every year, and today they saw how those plans collapsed. Why? Because the local distributors say, I am not going to buy your product because we have a policy of not buying gringo brands. Why? Because people don't want them. Even if I want to do you the favor of putting it on the shelf, people don't buy it. If you don't believe me, go and check out these articles. For example, this one about everything, which I'm going to put here, from The Guardian, and this one from Reuters. This one from Reuters talks precisely about this brand of diapers, which is already closing, because it sees how its sales plans, and many of those sales depended on Canada. Well, they no longer accept to sell their products here, because simply nobody wants to consume them. Jack Daniel's popular American liquor brand experienced a notable 15% decline in sales during March. This unfortunate downturn might be due to the prohibition of selling American liquor in Canada. You can't. Have it your way. Living Foods, for example, says that Walmart, in its Canadian division, Walmart Canada, it cut its orders, for example, of kombucha by half and a lot of products that have to do with the United States. For me, there is also a great incongruity here because we should not even be talking about going to Walmart to buy. That would have to be done away with in our vocabulary. Many people go to Walmart and decide not to buy products that come from the United States when the chain itself is American. So I think we need to open our eyes a little more. But the reality is that people here in Canada are turning to buying more local products. In order to support local businesses, it is crucial to increase the purchase of domestic products. The value of exports to Canada alone is a staggering $582 billion in the year 2024. Additionally, there is an additional risk of losing $145 billion in the tourism industry. This situation is devastating because the total exceeds the initially discussed amount of $350 billion. The repercussions of this impact various sectors in California, including manufacturers, transporters, hoteliers, and farmers. Unfortunately, they have already experienced significant losses. According to a Bloomberg report, farmers have already reported $50 million in cancellations. This distressing trend can have severe consequences, and the figures detailed attest to the severity. So it is very serious, because the United States has no way to replace that market so quickly. Who is it going to sell this to? Who do you think would be interested in selling this product to Mexico? No man, if Mexico does not need. What we have in surplus are the products of the countryside. Our agricultural producers give cheaper. And fresher, by the way. So Canada is not just a customer. Canada today is the neighbor. In the past, this country relied on that particular entity to purchase 75% of its energy exports and 20% of its manufactured goods. However, currently it is asserting no more. Now, the question is, who needs each other after going through all this? Border cities like Detroit, for example, that depend on the bridge that connects with Canada, which is the both sides of the border, where the crossings have dropped by 18%. Why? Because people are afraid to cross, unless there is an absolute necessity regarding labor matter. But those who can avoid crossing the bridge no longer do so. You can cross-check this information in the New York Times article I mentioned earlier. It also mentions that numerous small tour operators have stated this, as well as provides a direct quote. In that article that you see there, Real New York, which says that Real New York Tours lost $500,000 in cancellations of Canadian groups this year alone, and we are talking about a small company. So add to all this snowball that a decline in tourists implies an economic downturn with reduced income and job opportunities. Thus, Trump's collision with reality is evident. Because while he brags about his economy, the reality is that today the United States is bleeding to death because of $350 billion that Canada has put on the table and is taking out of his hands. And we from here are seeing how Las Vegas is turning into a ghost town in many of its casinos, how its businesses are begging for a respite that is not going to come, how all international tourism is collapsing because nobody wants to go to a country where they are going to arrest you just because you want to go to visit them, to spend money in their country, to spend money in their country, to visit, to spend money in their country. I repeat, last week we were showing these examples of what was happening with these German citizens, with these citizens from the United Kingdom and Canada, because they were seeing how, well, when they entered their country, to the United States, they were detained for the only crime of wanting to travel. And I repeat, they are not only the people who were traveling, even people who have work permits in the United States, and that was their livelihood. It was their livelihood. They were not doing anything wrong, but of course, we are discussing a lesson that Donald Trump intends to impart with its repercussions in mind. In Mexico, a saying goes, let's wait and see what happens, as fame is gained but uncertainties arise before sleep. After you treat German and Canadian citizens of the United Kingdom like that, well, the rest of the world says, man, why are you going to get arrested if that's the way it's going for them? Well, imagine how is it going to be for us, right? Look, by the way, let me show you some of these videos for you to see. Use some of these videos so you can see precisely what is happening and, well, what are you going to get into? If at this moment you are thinking of going to the United States, just watch this video. Just watch this video.
I had a work visa and traveled regularly between Canada and California. However, she claims she was unexpectedly stopped at the San Diego border when she tried to apply for a new visa. She is taken to a small cement cell with fluorescent lights and a toilet. In a cell, she discovers 5 motionless women, their bodies concealed beneath aluminum sheets, resembling corpses. The guard seals the door and confines them for a span of 2 days, permitting brief exits solely for sustenance. And the lights are never turned off and no one answers their questions. Not trusting the food, Yasmin decides to fast, thinking she would not be there for long. Afterwards, she is compelled to take a shower, provided with a uniform and subjected to fingerprinting. In addition, she undergoes an interrogation. I asked for information. How long will I be here? I don't know your case, said the man. It could be days, weeks, but I'm telling you now, you have to prepare yourself mentally. For months? In the end, Moni says she spent 12 days in detention.
In response to the immigration policies of the Trump administration, several countries have revised their travel advisories for traveling to the United States. Despite possessing valid visas, countless travelers were subjected to detention at the U.S. border. Germany updated travel advisory to the United States, week after deportation of several citizens detained at customs.
Short vacation turned into a nightmare for Lukas Silaf, a German tourist detained and taken to a facility in the United States.
They tied me up with chains on my stomach, my hands, my feet. They then placed me inside a van and transported me towards the detention center known as Sotninko.
Lucas was returning from Mexico to the United States. He says he had a valid visa, but spent 16 days in detention before returning to Germany. Detention of temporary visa holders and visitors upon entry into the United States is an apparent trend. One example is Canadian actress Jasmine Mooney, who was detained for 12 days for having an incomplete visa.
They didn't give me a warning. Then I found out I had been caught, and for 2 weeks I was not informed of anything. I was taken to different cells where I slept on the concrete floor. Nothing made sense to me.
A French scientist was denied entry into the United States for criticizing cuts to science programs. Deputies deny immigration policy violations or committing crimes. Incidents over stricter enforcement, immigration laws under Trump. The White House expels criminal immigrants within its jurisdiction.
The president utilizes both his executive powers and constitutional authority, operating within the framework of immigration laws to maintain the safety of law-abiding citizens. The primary emphasis of the administration is on apprehending and removing criminal individuals who are in the country illegally.
The crackdown also affects those who have violated immigration rules. According to Lukas Silaf, U.S. Customs may target anyone, regardless of their nationality or background.
Is no one safe to come to the US anymore? As a tourist, I get a lot of questions from people who want to visit the US, and I try to help them and tell them from my experience that they should be careful.
Immigration lawyers advise to take care of profiles in networks, avoiding criticism towards the U.S. administration, and thus increase options to enter the country.
Name, imagine. Avoid criticizing Donald Trump because without an immigration officer, you can be denied access to the United States. Tell me in the chat if you think they would give us access to the United States. We used to go, I was telling you the other day, Alba and I and the family here, well, at least once or twice a week. Buffalo is very close here. A lot of Canadian trade works that way. To Target, to these big stores, to just walk around. Why? Because they don't ask you for anything more than your passport and you show them and pass, or you used to. Not anymore. These are not the ones we're talking about. Imagine they are not people who are going to look for work. They are not people who are going to see if they will be given the chance to give them political asylum. No, no, no. They are citizens who were going to spend their money in the United States, who were going to Disneyland, who were going to vacation, who were going for business. Trump wanted to send this message to Canada and Germany, to those who are criticizing him, of look how I treat your citizens for criticizing me. But, well, now here he is having the consequences of that have already arrived. The karma already came to him because in some way, it's almost as if Trump aimed to provide us with a positive stimulus and ended up tripping over the sun. And this is precisely where we come back to Mark Carney's opening statements, who in the last 24 hours has already put things on high alert for the United States because he made a statement in which he said that Trump's tariffs are a mistake. Are a mistake? And he said that that mistake is going to cost jobs for the United States, also for Canada, of course. But he's going to make sure that it's going to hurt Washington the most. Why? Well, because of the trade issue, which is not really what Donald Trump is saying. Donald Trump is saying right now that he doesn't need anything from Canada. Tell me, what country at this point does not need someone else in a globalized economy? But at the end of the day, today we are seeing how he is paying the consequences of his actions and his arrogance. And for the time being, Canada is currently leading, let me tell you, this onslaught against the United States by the United States of America, this retaliatory onslaught against the United States. And curiously enough, it is doing so not on the basis of government programs or federal government action. This collective action that Canada is leading in the world of US non-compromise is the true sentiment of the Canadian sentiment. Really, folks, let me record you because the other day I uploaded a video that I recorded for you of what the supermarkets look like. There is practically not a single American thing on display. And when something goes bad, like yesterday, the chili peppers, these jalapenos, nobody touches them. They rot there. We may really need a lot, but they might as well rot. If it comes from the United States, you don't buy it. Period. Why? Because let's see, this is a guy who's threatening to disappear the country, that says we shouldn't exist as a country, and he's going to colonize Canada and he's going to make us the 51st state. Of course, if there is a little decency, a little patriotism to our Mexican citizenship, to our Canadian citizenship, and also to the citizenship of the whole world, because this threat is also going to Denmark, it is going to Europe, it is going to Panama, well, then the rejection, friends, is more than evident. It is not something you say, hey, not anti-US. It's not anti-American sentiment. It's just common sense. If you threaten me, okay, maybe I won't climb or do anything, but from that to me buying your stuff, we're talking about something very different. What will be the extent of Elon Musk's influence in these circumstances, inquires Manuel Camargo Ponce. This statement comprises 154 characters. Elon Musk is bearing the financial consequences as he sells Teslas, and its impact on his pocket is noteworthy. Yesterday we were talking about how Canada officially blocked the incentives for Tesla. It is a brutal blow, but he says it will hit Trump in the tower on the economy. Merced Rivas says Mexico should look for other markets. Yes, I think so. I have said it, and I think it is time to turn again to the BRICS that for years have been inviting Mexico to join. And well, we have fled or shied away from that idea, but I think it is time to reconsider. Gabriela PF says, under the expectation that the United States has, to those who enter its territory, it would be congruent to warn everyone. It is not convenient to go there as a tourist. Yes, in fact, there are travel alerts. My dear Gabriela, as a matter of fact, here in Canada, there is a travel alert not to go to the United States. And if you buy your ticket to go somewhere in the United States, when you go to the airport before you get in, they will make you, before you get in, they are going to make you sign a document, read carefully and explain that you are going. And they explain to you that you are going at your own risk and that you know that you are exposed to being put in jail or in a detention center unjustifiably, and that if that happens, the Canadian consulate will not be able to do anything for you. It will not even get its hands on it. So in Mexico, we call this travel alert. He who for his taste is an ox even licks his own ox. So what is happening here? Look, there it is. It has dropped by a staggering 70%. In flights, in consumption, just the start of tomorrow, as of April 2nd, with Trump's tariffs on the planet Earth. Starting from April 2nd, Donald Trump's decision to impose tariffs on every nation is set to have a groundbreaking impact on the future of global trade. If you are eager to witness the way this unprecedented development unfolds, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and join us in the upcoming stream.